In the house this morning, Miss Lisa Wallace. Good morning, Lisa.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, right on. District 6 candidate. You're going against Matt Brown.
Describe the district
Yeah.
roughly in its location. I called it sort of northwest Yakima, but how would you describe it?
So there's a few random cutouts on Inglewood
Yeah.
and ish, but for all intents and purposes, it's west of 40th and north of Tieton, the
There
north
you
side
go.
of Tieton to the county line.
Gotcha. So
Give
it
or
is
take.
northwestish, right?
A lot
That's
of
close.
folks in every district. But Lisa, tell her who's Lisa Wallace. Maybe if
And maybe more importantly, who's Janice Wallace?
Yeah, thank you.
Why
Stop
isn't
it.
she here?
Stop it. Lisa Wallace, tell us who you are. Maybe people missed your conversation with us before, but
Yeah, we're going off the assumption everybody's hearing you for the first time.
Yeah.
So in case those people missed, and we can backfill. So yes.
Okay, great. My name's Lisa Wallace. I was born and raised in Terrace Heights. I graduated from East Valley High School. Shout out to the Red Devils.
Red Devils.
Yeah.
Whoop, whoop.
Yeah.
I went to Washington State University. I have a degree in psychology and family studies. I did some young person's job all over the country. I was a flight attendant randomly for a while.
Really?
I was pre 9/11. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. And when I decided to move back as a professional, most of my background is in juvenile justice and child welfare. I started as a victim advocate in the prosecutor's office, working in the juvenile division with Joe Brusick. And then I moved over to juvenile probation and then eventually became the manager of the juvenile court. So most of my career has been in the juvenile justice and child welfare spectra. I had a job before I had my sons where I would travel around to each juvenile court in Washington, all the counties, and train and do quality assurance for juvenile probation counselors. And then my most recent paying job was I have a small consulting business where I work with nonprofits for strategic planning, board recruitment, board development, that kind of thing. And I took a contract to do interim executive director work for Rod's House, which is a youth homelessness serving organization here in town that does incredible work.
They get a lot of props
Yeah,
from
man.
a lot of people.
Yeah.
They do get a lot of props, and I'll talk to you about that as to why. They do such a great job. It was developed locally, grassroots folks, and they're really outward facing. They have no problems telling you what they're doing and asking for what they need. And
Yeah,
I think
that's right.
And I think we should all take a page out of that book because they do a great job. And then primarily, I'm a mother. I have twin 7-year-olds, and my husband and I own and operate an outpatient physical therapy practice. It's an interesting time to be a private healthcare owner,
I
which I'm
bet.
sure we'll get into.
Yeah. Wow.
And that's a little bit about me.
That's a lot about you. You've done a lot of different stuff, sort of in one field, but build, and that's laid out a pretty good career. So with so much, I guess, helping people who would appear to need help, victims and all of that, all through your trajectory, I guess this is just the next step in helping more people then. Maybe some of us who don't deserve it, like victims of crime.
Yeah, why are you running? I guess then we'll lead to that question. Yeah.
I'm running because I choose to live my life here. My husband and I choose to run our business here. We choose to raise our children here, and we choose to participate in the community. And I, for a long time, have been involved on the sideline. And finally, some folks said, why don't you give it a shot? Why don't you throw your name in? You have good ideas. You're a good listener. Why don't you go for it? And so I hemmed and hawed, and I thought, why not? Let's do this. I do have some things to offer.
Tough job in juvenile court,
Yeah.
helping those kids, being an advocate for them. Man, it's just you do angel work when you do that with those kids in court because they've been through so much. What do you think is the biggest challenge right now, especially for your district? What are you hearing? What are people telling you for Yakima?
So I've talked to a lot of people. I've knocked on a lot of doors myself.
Good.
And-
Just don't say they're all saying when Dave moved in, there went the neighborhood. Okay,
Well,
we've heard that. We
I've
don't
actually not heard that.
Oh, you haven't? Okay.
Surprisingly. You know, the interesting thing is, I talked about this last time a little bit, but anybody who lives near an arterial, so we have some that we do in the whole city, but District 6 has some highly traveled streets.
Yeah.
So 40th, some of you,
Yeah.
Inglewood, 66th. People have a lot of thoughts and feelings about traffic. And I don't mean like numbers wise. I mean speed, sound, danger,
Yeah.
In fact, very recently, I was talking to an elderly gentleman on his porch. He lives off of Summit View around the 80s. And we were interrupted multiple times because the traffic was so loud, so aggressive. There's also a pothole right by his house, so it made it extra loud when people would hit it. But so I would say that I was surprised to hear how interested and upset people are about that. So the red light camera thing didn't really make sense to me. If everybody's talking about this.
But the fact that we did not pursue it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we mentioned that yesterday in a conversation with someone, because people griping about slow down, quit everything that a traffic camera was really designed to do. But people hang on that, it's a revenue generator. Once you say that, well, even then, so what?
So what?
But even then, that shuts down the argument. But we still are then left with loud traffic, fast traffic, dangerous traffic. So
anybody that's teaching, I have lots of friends whose children are much older than mine, and anybody who's teaching someone to drive in our community right now is teaching them to not go, if you're the first car at an intersection when the light turns green, to not go, to literally wait.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And it's interesting. Everyone else has been saying they hear about crime.
Absolutely.
But I mean, not overwhelmingly though. You don't hear about people complaining about crime, do you?
Yeah.
Oh, you
I
do?
do.
Okay.
I do.
Okay.
People want to talk about streets and racing and dangerous driving, crime, and they want to talk about homelessness, and they want to talk about people appearing for work, showing up.
Yeah. Well, then I guess that kind of leads us into the next question about COVID. How do you think the city has handled the COVID? I don't know if the showing up thing and COVID were if I'm on the right line here, but anyway. How do you think the city has handled the whole COVID thing, and are you backing these COVID mandates with the vaccine and the masking?
So, I hate to criticize an entity for their response of COVID, because I come from a place of believing people do the best they can, and I don't know that we were prepared. I don't know that anybody was prepared for that. It's certainly a municipality. Do I support the mandates? Interestingly enough, I own a healthcare business, and so I'm going to speak from my personal experience.
Sure.
I also married into a family of all healthcare providers, and they're exhausted all over the country. Most of them live in other states. Mm-hmm. You can see it in their eyes. You can hear it in their voice. I'm pro-vaccine, and I'll say it clearly.
Sure, pro-vaccine, but
right.
pro me losing my job if I don't get one?
With that said,
yes,
I also own a business that the mandates impacted, and I found it fraught with challenges and problems.
Oh, wow.
It was rolled out ineffectively. It was rolled out in a way that, again, from my perspective, we are a small little business, and I spent days and days and days researching how to go forward. It was written from a place of a hospital or a giant state entity who has multiple on-staff attorneys, huge personnel departments. Almost every PT, chiro, dental office is a one practitioner show. We don't have a personnel department. I don't have an on-staff attorney. We spent a lot of money and time and energy researching how to follow it. The state gave us no resources and set the burden completely on top of the business owner yet again. And it was really, really frustrating. With regards to the actual philosophy behind it, I'm uncomfortable with the idea that there is no alternative out. Even California, from my understanding, has a testing option.
These are some of the strictest in the nation.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm uncomfortable with that.
One man's call. We don't have to do this. There's no national, moratorium on this. This sits in one spot.
I also don't think people know that there's a criminal component to it, because most people haven't spent days reading it, and it's written in legalese, and there is an actual criminal component that says my husband and I could be found guilty of a gross misdemeanor. I respect everyone, but I'm not going to jail for someone's choices. Now, again, alternative viewpoint is that employers have always been able to provide requirements for their employees.
Right.
But this is different, and it has provided challenges.
Yeah, there's a big difference between no shirt, no shoes, no work versus put this in your body and see what happens and get back to me in 10 years. Yeah.
I have had jobs, working in juvenile corrections, we were mandatory TB tested a lot. I've had jobs where you had to have Hep B vaccines, all those things. But this is just different because I think we need to find a way to continue to move forward safely and also give people opportunities to show that safety in other ways. Weekly testing, bi-weekly testing, whatever it is.
Yeah. Well,
I think a lot of people agree with you.
Anytime there's an exemption for the people who make the laws, that's a good sign that something's not quite right. I don't know if you're following a track there, Mr. Tormead.
Nope. I was just going to just follow up on just one last question. Have you lost any employees because they don't want to take the vaccine, and then you can't? Have you found those challenges like other businesses?
We have not lost any employees.
And when we come into your business, we are masking up because you don't want to go to jail, right?
Yeah. Well, and we're masking up because it's a healthcare practice, so we have a responsibility to ensure that you, as a patient, are entering a safe place, and we're masking up because we need to do that. It's full of elderly people. And
do you believe that the masks work that well?
I am not an epidemiologist. We are currently masking up.
Okay, got it. Can't blame you. All right. Well, I was just wondering what you, Lanston, I know there's a number of specific issues we want to get around to. We've got 2 minutes to go till news at the bottom of the hour, so I thought we might just take that to say, in your mind, having watched now, I'm sure you've paid more attention to council once one decides to run. What does it take to be a good and effective council representative? What are the qualities? What are the approaches?
I think it takes someone who does the homework and does the work behind the scenes, who's done the reading, who's done the discussions, who's listened to people, who's taken the phone calls and returned them, who's returned the emails and listened to the people. And you can tell who's doing the work outside and who isn't. I also think it takes someone with the ability to listen to alternative viewpoints, and I think it takes somebody who's willing to ask hard questions.
I concur. Lance, thoughts, comments?
Let's take a break, and we'll get you some news from Fox News, and I'll be back with your local and Northwest news. Lots of information for you, a forecast, and hey, then we'll be back into continuing our conversation with District 6 candidate Lisa Wallace. We've got Lisa Wallace in the house. She's a District 6 candidate for the Yakima City Council. Hope you've caught our conversation so far. And thanks for coming in, Lisa. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Like I said to our first candidate that was in, Danny Herrera, who was on the Progressive Voters Guide. You're on the Progressive Voters Guide, listed on a Progressive Voters Guide.
No, I'm not.
Okay, right here,
right there.
Which is my first question.
Yeah, really.
Do you have any
good question.
sense of involvement with this? Do they check with you
No.
before they do or anything like that?
No, I had no idea until you just showed me that.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Let's tell you what they say.
Yeah.
Lisa Wallace is a former victim witness advocate. Tell us if they get it wrong, okay?
Okay.
Yakima County Prosecutor's Office, probation officer with the juvenile court system, serves as the vice chair of the Yakima Planning Commission,
True.
founding board member of Voices for Children.
True.
Yeah.
All right.
Proud of that.
There you go. All that's just the setup. They got a lovely picture of you, by the way. If elected, she pledges to help find solutions for affordable housing, safety, homelessness. Yes?
Yes.
All right, nothing wrong with that, right? Recognizing the shortage of affordable housing, Wallace wants to form more partnerships with housing nonprofits and has supported the Housing Action Plan as a member of the Planning Commission.
True. Also proud of that.
There you go. She also supports pairing crisis responders with police officers when situations involve mental health issues.
Yes.
Now, to what extent are we doing that, Lance, now? I mean, there was a lot of talk with the whole defund the police aspect. We said that people said that one could replace the other. Your thoughts on that?
One does absolutely not replace the other. There was DCRs, or designated crisis responders, that were housed at YPD and could be dispatched to certain calls.
Singularly, without a uniformed officer with them.
No, they were going
They're always
together.
pairs. Okay.
Yep,
Yeah.
together in partnership. And there are some programs across the country where they have housed social MSWs or Masters in Social Work actual practitioners inside of police agencies with some interesting outcomes. I'm a big proponent of looking into this because we expect, not for a defunding purpose, but because we are asking law enforcement officers to do so much that is outside the confines of their skill set, their practice set, their training.
Yeah.
And we need them to be ready and able to go to dangerous crises. And some mental health crises are dangerous and others aren't.
Right. I would liken it myself to sending our military into nation build. You know, our military's good at destroying nations,
Yeah, right.
not building them
Right,
up, and they're not
right.
really trained for all of that. And so maybe the nuances necessary in certain situations isn't necessarily their specialty. The whole idea about having those folks on board is to take the law enforcement's, I guess there's a sort of, if somebody comes in with a gun and has the right to use it, that raises the temperature a little bit. And so by not having that necessarily be the lead of the pair might help in some mental health
And
situations.
having been a probation counselor for all those years, I have lots of friends in law enforcement, and I think it'd be an interesting show to interview a police officer leaving their career and a brand new police officer, because I think they have a little bit different perspectives
by all means.
on how to respond to a mental health crisis. And it's changed a lot over the years.
Yeah. Well, we'll conclude this aspect by saying this. They then talk about your opponent, and they basically say some things that, from a progressive point of view, that Matt Brown represents, that by comparison makes you the better choice. But you've not been notified by the Progressive Voters Guide creators that they were
Interesting.
picking you or
No.
anything like
Interesting. Do you
I've
consider
had
yourself
zero conversation with, I don't even know who they are.
do you consider yourself a progressive Democrat?
I do not.
Okay.
I consider myself an independent.
Okay. And let's make clear, you're pairing the officers with mental health folks. That's what you mean, folks. You don't mean that you want to replace officers with mental health folks going on emergency calls.
Be very clear, yes.
Yes. All right.
I do not.
Right on. All right. There's a couple of propositions on the ballot. Prop one. The whole vacant. If you don't show up for work at the council, you're going to be held responsible. Prop one. That's Prop one. Prop three is also about income tax. How do you feel about both
let
of
me
those?
just shoehorn this in.
Okay.
When you heard from people about people showing up for work, maybe that was part of what they were referencing?
That's what they were referencing.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
I am supportive of people showing up to work. I think it's a sad reflection that we have to amend our charter to do that. I am supportive of that. I am opposed to a city income tax.
There you go.
Okay. So you would be voting.
The language on the
I know.
propositions,
That's
it's
right.
some double negatives.
Yeah.
And,
You'll be voting yes to vote. Right?
I will be voting whichever way is
Yeah.
supportive of banning an income tax,
Bingo.
and whichever way is supportive of people coming to work.
And so will we. All right. What unique needs do you see in your district? And when you talk about those needs, are you going to be a council member for the district or for citywide? I mean, what do you consider yourself?
I think it's important that city council members understand that their neighborhood elected them, but they are responsible to the city as a whole. So what do I see as District 6 specific? I think we talked a little bit about it, roads, and there is some real significant road quality issues on Summit View, but I do know the council the council has plans and has a plan in place and actually is going to move forward with some Summit View.
Yeah, I was around when we on council when we spent like $20 million into the future to do the road work now, and because road stuff is so dang expensive, you don't really see like you got a lot of bang for your buck, and now you realize that you're basically encumbered into the future, and the screaming problem that has developed someplace else doesn't necessarily get the attention in a timely manner. That's very frustrating. I think you'll find.
Definitely.
Housing
Yeah,
gains.
talk about that because
Yeah,
housing
yeah.
is referenced there.
Yeah, yeah.
By the
Yeah.
voters guide thing. You confirm that. So we recently had council talking about raising a tax to pay for housing, or at least generating a $2 million annual fund. They've ultimately decided not to do that. What was your take on that, and what you might do going forward?
I didn't quite understand the proposal. I understood that the ledge apparently gave the ability for municipalities to pull a small percentage
Right.
of sales tax out for that.
Right.
And on its face, okay, but I didn't understand. I don't want to wag the dog with regards to income. So if the plan and proposal is solid, then it would make more sense. I didn't personally understand it, but that doesn't mean it wasn't laid out. I just didn't see it as a citizen.
Well, and they didn't even see it as they turned it down. So there you go.
With regards to housing, I'd love to talk about that. I've learned so much being on the Planning Commission, and my background in social work led me to one perception of what the term affordable housing meant, but really the language that we should be using is attainable housing, because what we have in Yakima and in communities across the country, we're not alone, is a housing stock crisis. One of the things I actually do for our clinic or for our family business is recruit doctorate level practitioners.
Oh, wow.
And I also have a show idea. I think you should bring on all the people locally that recruiting medical providers to our community, because you would get a really interesting perspective as to what's going on.
As
So-
the outside looks at it, Yakima.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah.
So
She's looking for more airtime. She does
or a
that.
producer job.
She
I don't
does
know.
that job. She's loving this microphone thing, right?
It's so true. The reason I say that is because I lose. So also PTs are in shortage in the West Coast. So physical therapists. P&W Youth program starts next year, which is very exciting, but that's going to take a while to fill the pipeline.
Generate, yeah.
So one of the things, I lose people all the time to Walla Walla, Kennewick, and Spokane. If you want to go to Eastern Washington, those are the places that I lose them to. And I'll tell you why. There is nowhere for anyone to live.
Yep.
Yeah.
So this isn't necessarily an affordability issue, although we have a very high poverty rate. And because our low stock, the rent values, we have a zero occupancy in the rental market and have for a long time. So those rents have gone up and up and up and are very disproportionate to our income level. When people are not leaving their first house, if you look at housing like a ladder, a traditional sort of ladder, the idea that a lot of people, not everyone, but a lot of people want to buy their first house and then level up and then potentially level up or retire and level back down. Well, there is nothing at that first rung. No one is moving. So these people are staying in their rental properties longer, meaning there's less vacancy, meaning the rent can then rise for basic econ. So in working on the housing action plan, the thing that I found really interesting that a lot of people don't know is that the two groups in Yakima that are most housing distressed or least represented in housing are single people and seniors. I've talked to so many. District 6 has a large population of 65 and older. And I've talked to so many of those people that are ready to sell their large single family homes, and they have nowhere to go. There is nothing smaller to buy.
Condos, apartments, or
Nothing.
just nothing. Wow.
So those, a lot of people will say, there's huge apartment buildings out in West Valley. There was a year-long waiting list before the last mail was.
There was. Yeah.
And so I lose doctorate level providers all the time because they can't find a place to live.
But now, those people aren't hurting for money. I mean, they've got the money. So what you're saying is they're
is a
ready to pay.
crisis.
They're ready to pay
Yes.
just about anything, but they can't find anything.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it really has reached crisis levels because it's impacting us economically.
Well, but then is that the city's responsibility then to help that whole situation?
Great question. So no, it isn't the city's responsibility to build public housing. We shouldn't be in the market of building the city of Yakima condo complex. But we hold the key to the regulatory space. They are the regulatory space. So we do have a responsibility to remove as many barriers as possible for creative alternative housing. I guess alternative is a bad word. But historically, our culture has always bought single-family homes on big lots. And there was sort of some status and prestige to that.
Sure.
Yeah.
We have to change our mindset. That no longer serves us. And we have to look at more creative higher density multifamily housing. So the city's done some really cool things in the housing action plan with regards to, we don't have a code, for example, for cottage housing. I didn't even know what that was a year ago. Cottage housing is this really great concept that would serve all kinds of populations in our community, low income space or a high income senior space, just somebody who wants a nice place that is no shared walls, individual ownership. They have shared green space. But because of our codes are written from that culture of large home, large lot, so much buyback, pushback, whatever that is, you can only build so far from the street. We have to rethink all of that. So in the plan, it literally talks about how can we make these changes. And what we had to do, we did a 2-hour study session about cottage housing recently. We pulled out the mobile home park to use as a template because we didn't know what else to do. And we just started redlining things and talking about alternative options, and it'll all go to public hearing, and we're just in the phase of discussion now. But I do think the city holds a huge responsibility in order to create space.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. They are the gatekeeper to how the game is played, and so there is a place, and there needs to be just the realities are going to put enough pressure on to force people to get in there. I mean, those are like yourself that are forward thinking about that. But everybody else is going to catch up if they're not there yet. Just
from a development standpoint, it's golden.
Yeah.
That really leads us into homelessness. Got any answers?
Sure. Done.
Got a big backyard?
Yeah. I mean,
I do have some experience. I spoke earlier about being the executive director of Rod's House for a short period of time, and it was my privilege. Homelessness is one of those really difficult social challenges, and our community isn't unique. This is a crisis all across the country for a myriad of really complex, really difficult reasons. I think it's important to know that a chronically homeless person has as unique of needs as how they got there, meaning there isn't one solution. If there was, we would have done it. You can't walk up to a homeless encampment or someone on the street and have a solution for them but we must provide resources and an opportunity to shelter people. We have to. Now, is it the city's job to shelter them? No, but it is, again, similar to housing.
For those who want to do it?
Absolutely. It is to provide a regulatory space that supports, engages, and brings together the groups that are doing that work, faith communities, nonprofits, NGOs, all of the things together so that we can tackle this together. Because, again, there's not only there's a deeply humanistic problem with people being unsheltered, but we also have an economic problem because we have decided that this is a community that can bring in serious dollars for tourism and travel, and we can't do that if there's human tragedy in the main foyer of where tourists are coming. Also, we are human beings and we need to care for one another. So there's two really good reasons.
Yeah, just a couple of minutes left, but I got to get this in. Gang crime. How do we, and does that come up when you are recruiting people? Are we still the Yakima crime place and stuff? And
to what extent does it show up in District 6?
It does show up in District 6. It's everywhere. Does it show up when I'm recruiting people? Oh, that's a great question. When I'm recruiting providers, I'll get questions about I Googled this and I read this. But no, it doesn't come up nearly as much as I thought it would. It's interesting you bring that up, Lance, because I have some friends that have a really great new Airbnb downtown. And they said one of the most exciting things about it is it's all people from outside, obviously, coming to stay downtown. And they are so excited, so happy, so congratulatory. And Yakima's biggest problem is our self-image.
I agree.
People outside of Yakima think we are sitting on a gold mine, and we have got to start talking like that. We have huge challenges. I don't want to minimize that. We do. I didn't answer your gang question. Should we come back to that one?
Well, gang crime. I mean, do you think that is there a plan out there?
Yeah, I do think there's a plan. There's a great plan. So I've talked about this before, but this is an us problem. This isn't a them problem. It's not YPD's responsibility to solve it. They certainly need to take a leadership role in their part, but this is a community-based problem. And first of all, we talked about this before too. The idea that asking community members to engage in a public discussion about reading a book and educating themselves came with mockery, I think speaks to how little people want to actually be engaged in the solution. It's very easy to criticize. It's much more difficult to get involved and participate in the discussion. So they have a plan in place to work to get, there's an FBI task force that's getting started. Safer streets.
Safe Streets Task Force. That's right.
And I think that should be helpful because gang members aren't stagnant. They don't stay just in 16th Avenue. They are in Sunnyside, Granger, Grandview. I've worked with these kids for years. So there's a plan in place for that task force. There's also, I think the city did a great job when they decided to get a data analyst. I was shocked. I used to work at the Washington State Center for Court Research, and I was shocked that YPD didn't have a data analyst because that's how you make good quality decisions. So this idea that we're going to spend time, energy, and data researching who is the greatest risk to create violent crime and then targeting them and spending emphasis on them is going to result. Sorry, I'm getting the time.
No, I'm just,
okay.
I'm giving you a thumbs up.
So I do think there's a plan, and I think we all need to participate in the solution.
This is your chance. You got everyone in front of you. You got a bunch of people listening out there.
Millions on the app.
Tell
us why people should be voting for you and not your opponent.
I think that I bring a really unique skill set. So my background working in the public sector, I've managed $1 million plus budget of public funds. At the same time, I also run a business, and I understand how business owners are often shouldered with a larger burden than they should be. I think also some of the biggest issues facing our city, housing and youth crime, are my background, are literally my resume. So I think I have a really unique skill set, and I'm uniquely qualified for this job.